Okay. CJ, good morning. How are we?
Hi guys, all good yourself?
CJ, let's cut to the important part. You look like you need a haircut like us.
Oh, it's tough times these, I think it's 20th of July that we're getting that done. But yeah, you have to take the pros and the cons of things. I think there's been a lot of good that's come out of this time. Obviously, we're getting pretty sick of it by now, but you guys have been very innovative with all your ideas, and
Oh, yeah,
I'm trying to
fine.
focus on different parts of my training. So
Brilliant.
yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And CJ, just some structure for today. I know we talked to you before, but it's our second episode. I don't think people understand how long we've known each other for. I think it was 4 years old when we met in
I think, yeah, I remember playing with Playmobil with you guys, so we must have been pretty young.
so every Friday, CJ, we'd go over the years.
Yeah, build a castle.
CJ, obviously, like I was saying, 21-year friendship. We know you really well, but maybe just tell some of the viewers just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Colin Judge. I'm from Dublin. I was born with no legs and one arm, and in the last 5-6 years, I've gotten into the Paralympics. So I'm a Paralympic table tennis player, hoping to qualify for Tokyo 2021 now. I was hoping to compete this year, but we have to wait for that now. I also work in finance as an actuary, so that's on hold at the moment. I'm kind of focusing all my energy into table tennis in the Olympics, so really hoping that gets going some stage next year.
And obviously, CJ, like we went to school with you. We went to St. Michael's together. It was a rugby playing school. I know myself and Paddy got into boxing when we were in secondary school. But when did you get into table tennis? So what was your first experience with sport?
Yeah, sport has been hugely important to me. I think it's helped me deal with my disability. It's probably been the number one thing that's helped me deal with my disability, and it's given me a lot of confidence in myself. But having said that, it wasn't an easy kind of transition into sport. Like you said, a lot of our mates were playing rugby, and you guys obviously got into boxing. But for me, my first experience of sport was probably when I was like 12, and it was actually wheelchair rugby. So I remember going down to the Irish Wheelchair Association, and I remember trying it for like 10 minutes, and I couldn't play because I was in so much pain. My little arm, my right arm here, it was actually quite pointy back then, and it was causing me a lot of pain and discomfort. So it didn't really last long. I'd never really done much physical activity before at all. But a few days later, then I got the idea. I think we were in biology or something. The teacher was talking about a scalpel, and I got the idea. Would it be all right to like trim it off a little bit? It's not really helping me at all here. So I said, do something about it. And yeah, so I went home to my mum. She was obviously shocked when I first suggested cutting my arm off, but it wasn't really doing me any good. And since then, we got the best medical advice, and it's just a little piece of my arm that we got cut off.
Yeah.
And I was able to go back then like a month later, and I wasn't very good at all. Couldn't
I
really.
was going to say, the rugby career, it never took off, did it?
Yeah. No, wheelchair rugby. I did finish out the season that year. I wasn't really competitive at it at all. But I suppose the point was that I was just so desperate to get into sport, and it wasn't that I had no legs and one arm. It was just that I was in a lot of pain and discomfort. And once I got that sorted out, I felt that I could compete. Even though I was wrong, I still wanted to get involved. But I realized by the end of the season that I wanted something more, and so I tried out a few more sports and came across table tennis. And I suppose the main reason I liked table tennis from the start was it was the only sport that I could beat my brother at.
Okay, yeah.
And I really liked that. Even though like any sport, there's a lot of things that I couldn't do. I felt that I could make up for it, by getting really good at things. Like I'm playing close to the table, obviously, and I really liked the fact that I could make up for my disability in a way by using my head and just practicing at things that other people can practice at, but maybe they don't. So yeah, that was kind of the big attraction of table tennis.
And I think it's honestly, look at all the success you've had with table tennis. But even before that, in Michael's, as well as we do, it's such a sport crazy school. Was
Yeah.
it was it tough not having a sport for the first eight years or so?
Yeah, it was very difficult. And that was probably the time where, it was most difficult to deal with my disability. Because I suppose when I was born, I didn't really know much different. My parents, obviously it took me a lot longer to, do basic things like, feed myself and, wash myself, get dressed, things like that. But I kind of learned kind of through failure to do those things, pretty well. And obviously, as you guys know, I'm kind of completely independent now. But I think, yeah, when you're at that age and you just want to fit in and, school is over and, everybody's going off to play rugby and you don't really have anything to do. And at that stage, I wasn't really into academics either, as you guys know. So, it was quite difficult. And that's, I suppose, why I said about the wheelchair rugby, even though I kind of knew it was a long shot and probably wasn't the right sport for me. It was the desperation to get involved. And, once I found something that, I could excel at and that I could meet people at and, travel, I think I never looked back since then.
Yeah. And CJ, what age were you when you played table tennis for the first time?
So I started playing table tennis when I was 13. So that was 12 years ago. So it's a long time. There's been a lot of ups and downs, I suppose. It's taken me a really long time. It took me a very long time to get to any sort of a level, really. That was the thing. I talked about wheelchair rugby and how difficult it was, but table tennis was also very difficult. I didn't really have anybody to look up to. Yeah. There was no one else with my disability that was playing, and my coaches were kind of guessing a lot of the time, and it's just like, I suppose my peers passed me out. That was a big thing that was quite difficult. I kind of thought at the start, when I started playing with my brother, that I was pretty good, and compared to other sports that I was, but it's never nice seeing your peers like surpass you like that, and I just had to work harder. It was as simple as that. And so that's what I did, and I think it was when I got my first taste of kind of the international scene that really, really motivated me, because it was the first time that I saw people with, disabilities, similar disabilities to myself. I saw them perform at such a high level, and then I saw no reason why I couldn't do that,
Yeah, no, exactly. CJ, we obviously know you well. You don't really do stuff in half measures. Like, when you're academics, you go full on. When we have a night out, the life of the party type of thing. With table tennis, like, so you started when you were 13. When did you think you could actually make a career out of it like you are now, or even pursue it to an Olympic standards? Because obviously, from a beginner's point of view, trying to get to the Olympics, it's a massive jump.
Yeah, no, it was very, very difficult. Like, I was kind of happy to make the Leinster League team. I remember when I was like 14, 15, that was like after 2 or 3 years of playing. After my international debut, I was doing all right, even in able-bodied table tennis in Ireland. I was playing quite well. But yeah, when I played my first tournament, that really kind of put things in perspective and, let me know how much work I had to do. I remember like I had done camps in Germany and France, and I was the only Irish, and they used to call me a tourist. And, I was very desperate to prove them wrong. But, that took a really long time, and probably even longer for me, because I didn't have the same support. I didn't play as many events, and gradually over time I started to win like bronze medal, silver medal, in smaller tournaments. But I suppose it was when my current coach took over. His name's Gavin Maguire, and that was when I really started to win. And then I kind of started to believe that I could be very good and I could win at the top level. Yeah. And so that probably brings me up to the European Championships, which was it was a dream come true for me. It was probably one of the best weeks of my life. And I'm not going to bore you with all the results. It started off really, really badly, even though I'd won 2 big tournaments coming up to it. So my expectations were quite high, I suppose. But I'd never won anything worth talking about. So, and after the first match, at this stage, I was training full time. I just finished college, and I lost the first match to a very, very low ranked player. That was probably because I was nervous, or I don't know what happened, but I remember, going back to my hotel that day, and I don't cry too often. I cried my eyes out because I just poured everything into it, and I just felt that it was over now. But my coach told me, look, that I was so young, I had nothing to lose, and I should just go out there now and play how I practice. And it was a really long shot. I had to play number 7 in the world in my next match, and I had to win 3-0, so it wasn't looking good. But I just went, and it was like a switch. I was a completely different player, even though the French guy was 5, 10 times better than the guy I just lost to. I had so much confidence. I had absolutely nothing to lose, and I just wanted to prove. It wasn't even that I wanted to win. I just wanted to prove that I was a good player. And it's like anything. Once you get one match, you get a little bit of confidence. Suddenly it was 2, 3, 4, 5, and I was in the final. And then I started to feel a bit of pressure. I realized then that I could win, but and I remember I lost the first set in the final, and I was so tense and so worried. And again, just I started to relax. I just realized that I had nothing to lose. That it was a privilege to be out there and to play for Ireland at the top level. So I managed to get the job done in the end, and it was then that I realized that I could really make it to the World Championships. I could hopefully compete at the Olympics someday. So I suppose it was a long road to realization, but got there in the end.
And CJ, how do you deal with the mindset? It always fascinates me. Like, where do you get your confidence from when that pressure hits? Do you think about all the hard work you've done? Is it your positive self-talk? To give you some context, if we play table tennis all the time, we have it in the house, and we might bet a little bit of money, or we'll bet the loser has to take the job fast in the morning. And once there's any stake on, I end up just hitting the ball out the whole time. You get me? You can't.
Particularly with table tennis, if you tense up, more than us, but balls can go a mile off the court.
It's very difficult from that point of view, and I still struggle with that. I have improved a lot over the years, because I've realized, I think something that I did, when I was a little bit younger, I was always trying to, protect what I had. I was obviously at a decent level, and I kind of had a very defensive mindset. I was kind of happy to lose to people who were better than me and happy to win against players who were worse than me. But it was when I kind of changed to that growth mindset, and I just kind of lost track of the results. I was more focused on my performance, and if I've tried some new things in training, I'd really want to get out there and test myself in competition. And so I suppose it was more that I forgot about the results. I forgot about all the expectation that was on me, and I just went out there and enjoyed it, and was grateful for kind of the opportunity to play. And I suppose I at that point I should talk about my reclassification, because I talked about the European Championships there, and that was obviously like a massive high for me. And but the reclassification was probably the biggest low that I've ever come. And a lot of people say, you've dealt with so much more than that. You were born with no legs and one arm, and you've come through so much more. But at that point, I didn't really have a whole lot. And anything, like I said, even getting involved in sport, and even passing an exam was like the best feeling in the world. But I think when the reclassification came, I was one of the best players in the world. I had a lot of sponsors. I just graduated from college, and I suppose I'd achieved a lot more than I ever thought I would. And then to have it taken away from me like that, so a reclassification, just to explain it really quickly, I think since you guys are all boxers, it's the best way I could describe it as being moved up weight class, or moved up disability class, in my case. And that meant that I lost my ranking, I lost my funding. I went from one of the best players, being one of the best players in the world, to being kind of above average. And since then I've had to change my mindset completely. Like I said, I was one of the best players in my old class, and a lot of the time I was quite negative, I would say, quite defensive of what I had. And they eventually, with that attitude, the other players would have caught up to me. And so there has been a lot of difficulties and a lot of negatives about my reclassification, but I'm definitely a much better player because of it, because I've just simply had to become better. There is no two ways about it. I still wanted to go to the Olympics. I hadn't qualified in my old class. And yeah, it's like when you lose sight of the shore, I suppose, and you just, I know that's very cliche, sorry. I just managed to, and it wasn't even that I was being compared in a different way. My results weren't as good, but I was playing better. And I think I was enjoying it a lot more. I was playing a lot more freely. And I just hope that, next year that it's my level, that it's enough to qualify for the Olympics and I get my chance on the big stage.
And CJ, well, I always think like we talk to you all the time. We always hang out together. And something that we always admire, and I can talk about it in so many different examples, but your mindset to like dealing with obstacles. So you talk there about being reclassified and just a challenge. Like, how does your mindset shift from being like really disappointed, and if it was my experience, I'd probably be a little bit like bitter about the whole thing, to just accepting it and seeing the positives in it?
Yeah, well, I was definitely bitter about it for a while. Don't get me wrong. I try not to complain about it too much. But yeah, I think a reason for that was probably because, you know, the way that my parents raised me. And, you know, from a really young age, like I said, you know, when I was born, the doctors, they more or less told my parents, you know, they gave them a list of things that I wouldn't be able to do. And, you know, more or less said that I'd be a big baby for the rest of my life. And, you know, my parents never accepted that at all. They, you know, they thought of so much more that I was capable of. And like, so, you know, they were always there to support me, but they let me fail. You know, they'd give me my shirt or whatever, and they let me, you know, put it on myself. And they were always there to support me. But I suppose from a really young age, I had exercised that muscle of, like, you know, trying something, falling down and getting back up. And so I'm really used to that my whole life, even though I wasn't so used to it. And, you know, when I'd won the European Championship, I started winning things then. Like, I still remembered very clearly all the times that I tried stuff and failed. And, you know, with that memory, I suppose, when the reclassification hit, and then I had a few weeks to think about it, I realized, you know, I have overcome so much more. And, you know, I've done things that maybe a lot of people thought weren't possible. And, you know, the reclassification is just, it's another challenge, I suppose. And yeah, it was to do, I think, with the way my parents raised me, and that idea, you know, that, you know, failure can be your friend, like that. You know, you're never going to know until you push your limits. And I think that's the best way I can describe it, is that you have to have that mindset. If you're afraid of failure, you would never try anything difficult. And I think you guys can vouch for that yourself. Like in the earlier days, it's, you know, you have to take chances. You have to get out there. You have to do your best and just hope that things work out. And I think that was the biggest reason why I'm able to deal with it. I haven't dealt with it fully, the reclassification, yet, but I'm making progress.
And then, CJ, another thing, this is what myself and Paddy always talk about, coming back to mindset. But so sometimes, like, when you started off playing table tennis, if you were to aspire to be an Olympic athlete from the offset, I nearly think it's such a daunting goal. By the sounds of it, you were saying like you were so happy just to make the Leinster team. So you just find from your own experience, setting small benchmarks and gradually reaching them, well, it gives you more motivation to aim higher after.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I definitely take it in small steps. Yeah, like I never, like, even, and this is a good example, I think, of Rio. So that was obviously the 2016 Paralympics. And this puts it in perspective. Like, I was only really thinking about the Slovenian Open or whatever that year. I was never thinking of Paralympic qualification. Partly that was because we don't really have the setup and I didn't have the support here. But I was only ever looking to the next tournament. I didn't ever look too far ahead. And maybe that was a little bit of a regret that I had, because I probably could have qualified for Rio. I was quite close in the end. I missed it by one place. And I started to get really good results in 2016, which it was a little bit too late. But yeah, that's always been my strategy, not to look too far ahead, because like you said, it's just so daunting. And, you know, I had a really long way to go. So I really wasn't thinking of Olympics. It was just, you know, it was an unbelievable feeling for me, you know, to beat the number 4 in the world. And obviously I would have had to do it consistently to qualify for the Olympics. But yeah, I think then after I missed Rio, I was a little bit disappointed. I was kind of just angry that I didn't, you know, give it everything I had. And then, yeah, I started to look towards the big goals, Tokyo. But having said that, I'd still have like small goals in between, because that's the only way I can keep myself motivated, you know, like realistically, the Olympics is in 15, 16 months. Like, if you looked ahead to that, like, you certainly wouldn't be doing any training now. And, you know, you just wouldn't, you know, so I kind of have to just look at maybe, you know, hopefully there might be a tournament in Dublin in September that I can prepare for, and that's what I've used this time for, just kind of making, getting myself ready for when, this lockdown does cease. And, I think another thing that I've focused on, during the lockdown is just, areas that I neglect so much when, we have everything. It's like simple stuff like, workouts. There's obviously when we're not on lockdown, there's so many more fun things to do. And for me then, I've got a table in my house now, and I've always been bad for practicing my serves, and now that it's the only thing I can do, my serves are unbelievable. So I think there's pros and cons to everything. But I would say definitely I don't look too far ahead.
Well, CJ, I hear you've been watching loads of Netflix as well. You've been sending us over.
No, I try. Well, I really like The Last Dance. I think that's an interesting one for me. Like, it's just like greatness, isn't it? And his work ethic really is something that I aspire to. It's quite incredible. How disciplined he was, and that's I suppose having watched that, I think that's even further motivation to. During this time, it's so easy. I think everything is so controlled. Well, for me anyway, because a lot of the time I'm away, obviously, and there's so many. It's hard to keep healthy. It's hard to go to the gym consistently, and now I feel like I can control everything. I'm at home the whole time, and it's amazing the results. Like even though I can't practice, I can't swim, I can't do a lot of things that I normally can, you can still do a lot. And I think that's been a big thing for me. Like, it's just small. There's always something you can do. I think that's the biggest thing that I've
back a little bit. So a lot of people, when they hear like a full-time sports athlete, a rugby player, a boxer, they kind of know what their day-to-day life is. But a full-time table tennis player looking to go to the Olympics, are you not, when we're not in lockdown, what's the normal Monday, Tuesday morning for you? How does the day go for you?
Yeah, I think it's quite different, and I suppose the big reason for that is because table tennis is a minority sport here in Ireland. There's not really the setup, so a lot of the last year I've been abroad. I've been living in Slovakia. I was spent a good lot of time in China as well. A lot of the time on my own, and so it is really strange. I kind of, every week can be different. I was based in Slovakia for a few weeks. Obviously that's very, very different to Dublin. It was quite a culture shock, but I get used to it, and I do what I do. I have to get good practice, and I simply can't get that here. So I have to travel a lot, and the experience in China was just eye-opening. It was a bit lonely at times, but I kind of quickly understood why they're the best country in the world. It's just like tunnel vision. The work ethic is unbelievable, and that's why I've loved the last year. I've been so happy to be in that environment, and I think that's the most important thing that I've never really had. Like I said, when I was younger, I didn't really have someone to look up to as such, and I think when I'm training and playing with the best players in the world, it's the only way for me to maintain my level and to get better. So I suppose it's a really weird routine. A lot of the time I'd have training in the morning, I'd have training in the evening, I might do some video interviews or speeches throughout the week, try and go to the gym. But there's a lot of kind of lonely times then as well. Like, I suppose before I went full time, I was used to working all day, and then I'd practice, and the practice was nearly like a release. So it's quite a change to have that as my job. And obviously there's a lot of free time like any sports person, and sometimes it's it's quite hard to utilize it. And I think that's something that I've become better at now, because I obviously still don't have my work, I don't have my practice either, but I'm still kind of a lot more structured and disciplined than I was when I was in Slovakia or I was in China. So I think my routine is going to change a lot when this lockdown ends. But it's a pretty crazy routine. It's not something I ever thought that I'd be doing.
And CJ, going back to mindset one more time, I just think it's such an interesting subject. But going back to Michael's, like, you play rugby, there's a clear path. There's people you can idolise, Brian Driscoll, Johnny Sexton, and in my opinion, that really makes it easier because there's a blueprint. From what you were saying, is like there was no clear idol, there was no clear end goal. So Like, what were you working towards?
Yeah, like that's again a really good point, and that was something I struggled with in the earlier days, and probably I'd be a much better level now if I'd worked really hard from the start. But to be honest, I didn't. I just didn't, like, it was just for fun really, because that's the way table tennis is looked at in Ireland. Like, it's nearly just a sport. It's like a hobby sport, and yeah, it was only then that like I said, when I had my international debut, that I started to see the best players in the world, and yeah, like that you need that, to be honest, for me anyway. Otherwise, you feel like you're just playing something for the sake of it, and yeah, I think like um
We can hear you. Right.
yeah, sorry guys. um
Can you
you
see
guys
it?
see me? Yeah. What was I saying there?
You're talking about I
What
love
was the train of thought?
It will be a bit clean cut. And CJ, another thing on mindset. I know I'm grilling you, but like the reason why I think like you refer to it as like a muscle that people have. So when people look good physically, people always saying, "How did you get in shape?" type of thing. But I feel like people don't pick the brains of people that have a really good mindset. So you're saying experiencing failure is critical to being successful. A lot of people, like us included, sometimes you shy away from doing stuff because you're scared of failure. What would your advice be to people like that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely like and in the earlier years, that was my mindset. It was like, it wasn't the worst thing in the world that I lost to someone who's like ranked way ahead of me, but it is the worst thing ever if I lost to someone who was ranked behind me. And that was a really bad attitude to have, and that held me back quite a lot. And it was only then that I looked at every match the same way, as an opportunity to test my skills, and like work on what I've been working on in the practice hall. Yeah, like you cannot be afraid of failure in my eyes. Like, it's been probably the biggest learning tool for me. I never would have achieved anything if and I think it's the best example is when I was growing up. Like, if my parents had done everything for me, I never would have failed at anything, but I never would have learned anything either. So yeah, and it's like that now, when I'm playing, like, if I hold my ranking and I do the same strokes and play the same shots as I do every day, I'll probably maintain my level, but I'm never going to get better. And I think I know I say this to you guys a lot. Sometimes you have to take a few steps backwards to take a step forward. And I think since the reclassification, I'm a lot more open to doing that, and that's the only way that I'm really going to reach a high level. So I'm glad that I've learned that, because having this protective mindset, and I was really guilty of that. When I was a top player, it was always protect, and never really look for too much more. I felt that I was so close to the top that it would just happen, but it wouldn't have happened, because with that attitude, you're never going to get better. Everybody else is going to get better. Like, the level is getting higher and higher and higher all the time, and you have to be improving. You definitely have to be adapting, and that's the biggest thing that I would say.
And CJ, on a side note, what a lot of the listeners wouldn't know is you've done a lot of swimming as well. I think that's a sport you've shown, like, your mindset, your mental strength, your determination. Would I be right in saying you swim up to, in the UCD pool, 50 unbroken lengths before? Or regular?
Yes. Yeah. Not recently, but I'm looking forward to get back into it. I think it's going to be the 20th of July, unfortunately. But no, swimming it's a great kind of release for me. It's obviously very different to table tennis. It helps keep me fit and injury free, I think. But yeah, I love swimming, and it's a really different sport, I think. And I would have been interested, I think, to compete at that, because you're obviously very alone. Your head is in the water. It's so different to table tennis. It's obviously physically much more difficult, but then yeah, it's kind of a strange one, because you're completely alone. And like in table tennis, it's obviously one-on-one. It's like boxing nearly. Like, you're in your opponent's face, aren't you? And like it's a completely different mindset that you need. But I really enjoy the balance between the two of them. I think I practice so much table tennis, so to be able to do something different is really, really good. And I suppose during this lockdown, I've gotten into like pushing my wheelchair like long distances. So yesterday I did like 8K along the strand, and I think that's the closest thing to swimming that I can get at the moment. It's just like that different type of energy, I suppose.
Yes. And CJ, obviously none of us are experts on how this whole thing is playing out. And I know we chatted about this, and I don't think either of us saw the whole coronavirus getting this bad. But if you were to make a prediction, what the rest of say 2020 looks like, what do you think?
I think there's not going to be very much travel and competitions. That's from my point of view. I think the guidelines that Leo came out with there on Friday, I think they're quite cautious, and I think I think we're going to do a little bit better than that. They're very conservative, those guidelines. I would hope, obviously looking at my hair, I'd hope that their haircuts surely before the 20th of July. I don't really see any reason why swimming and golf and certain sport. I think our sports, table tennis, boxing, I think it's more difficult for those type of sports. But yeah, I think it's going to be pushed ahead. It's going to be accelerated, the process a little bit, I think. But yeah, the biggest thing I'm interested in is international travel, and that wasn't even really mentioned, I think, in the guidelines. I don't know, but you see, it's just annoying because my competition now, like a lot of the countries in Europe are they're a lot further ahead of us. So I kind of hope that, I think though, if they're successful, in their in the steps that they've set up, I think then Ireland is just waiting to see what's going to happen with the other countries, and then hopefully. Exactly. I think everybody's sick of it by now. Even though, like I say, for me anyway, there's a lot of positives that have come out of it, and I have learned a lot from it. But yeah, it's been a long time now. How long has it been? Maybe 6-7 weeks at least.
5 weeks, yeah.
2 months. Yeah. So, and I know you guys have learned a lot from it as well. You're doing video interviews. You're your online classes. It's all really good. You just got to make the best of the situation, don't you? And I think everybody's in the same boat, obviously. So, I think if you or I can make use of the time better than the competition, I think we're winning.
Yeah, good mindset. Yeah. Good mindset. And then, CJ, last thing, you talked about it there. I'm conscious some people listening to this will have less time than ever. They've got their kids to look after. They're still working their jobs, and they're more time for it than usual. But there's also people in the same spot that you and I are, in the sense that we're used to being really busy, and then we have a lot more time. What would your advice be, just to keep it structured, staying productive? By the sounds of it, just from your day-to-day life, you have a nice routine.
Yeah, no, I do. I think, and yeah, a lot of the things I do, I suppose, they're kind of like counterintuitive. You wouldn't really think that they're a good idea, but the biggest thing, I think, and the most obvious thing for me is, like, I plan out my day or my weeks, and I know you guys do that as well, because it kind of makes me accountable, because obviously in this time, it's so easy to say, I'll do it tomorrow, or, I won't do it at all. For me, I could say, well, like, the Olympics isn't until 2021. Maybe it's not even going to be in 2021. So, yeah, I think if I write down a plan, though, and I say, this is what I'm going to do during this time, for me, that makes me accountable. And, I'm much more likely to do it if I say that I'm going to do it. So that would be the biggest thing. I'd make a plan. The second thing I'd say would be to get up early. Because I don't know about you guys, I'm not very good at sleeping in, but when I do, it just makes me feel lazy, and half the day is gone, and then, I don't get done what I wanted to, and yeah, that's not good for me. And the biggest thing then, I think, is that I'm like eating and drinking very well, because again, I get very lazy if I'm eating bad. I don't bother practicing then. Certainly wouldn't be doing my serves. I wouldn't do my workouts. But yeah, I try, and I suppose I have like 3 exercises that I do in the day. This would be an example of the day for me. I'd practice my serves in the morning, say, then I'd go out to the strand and, I'd push a few kilometers. And then in the evening, I'd try and do a workout. And on the in-between, then I'd try and, stay in touch with, people like you guys, or, my friends, or try and do other speeches. And, then obviously in the evening, there's like reading and Netflix, and, the day goes pretty quickly once you've planned it out. But yeah, if you're sitting there and not doing anything, like it's difficult. So that's what I'd say. Just you got to make plans.
Yeah.
And
Going back to table tennis briefly, CJ. Obviously, the Olympics, it's been postponed. What do you see in the ideal world if the Olympic goes ahead in 2021? What's left for you to do on like the qualification process?
Well, obviously, if I do qualify for Tokyo, it'll be my first Olympics. So, and obviously, Paris would only be 3 years later. So, I definitely want to stay in the game. Probably after Tokyo, I'm going to think about my career a little bit more. Maybe try and get into speaking. I've done a little bit of it already. I'd kind of like to grow to that brand that I'm trying to create. But no, my goals are going to stay the same. You know, I know Tokyo is my first Olympics. I have my review for my reclassification, which I'm not going to go into too much, but there's a chance that I can be moved down to my old class. So that would obviously change the goalposts a lot. But I don't see myself retiring or anything, if that's what you're asking for, until at least 2024. Then I'll probably review things. But Tokyo and Paris are kind of like, it's only 3 years now between them. And, you know, I'm going to make a plan, I think, after Tokyo for Paris. But I really want to qualify for Tokyo first. And unfortunately, at the moment, I don't know what the qualification criteria is. And it's the uncertainty that's the most difficult thing about that. You know, it's hard to make any plans myself. And it's been my dream ever since London 2012. So I'm not going to make any big plans until I have that under my belt.
Yeah. CJ, last question. Are you more excited? Is it to get back playing table tennis or to get back into coppers, if you had to choose?
That's a tough one. I haven't been in coppers in a long time. I have to say the table tennis, don't I? But no, I'm looking forward to a big night out when this is all done. Like, I think we all need a celebration. You know, we've missed out on so much the last few months, and you know, especially me with my training. I haven't been out. I've been very good. I haven't been drinking. I've been going to bed early every day, and yeah, I'm just sick of it, to be honest. So I'm definitely looking forward to a big blowout first, and then the training can start after that.
DJ, great to have you on this morning. Pleasure talking.
Thank you guys. It's a pleasure.
Some really, really interesting points. If people want to follow your story, Instagram, that's where you post most of your updates, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I plan to post a lot more. I'm hoping to get back to some sort of training in June, July, and you know, I don't know what the situation is with travel after that, but hopefully I'll have some more interesting content than just like working out in my back garden. You know, it's like a lot of people, you can't do a whole lot else at the moment. But yeah, no, we're getting there. So yeah, I'll keep you guys updated.
Take care, CJ.
See you soon.
Guys, stay limitless.
There we go. Bye bye.